I would be very reluctant to say that really Islam is the cause, because you look at the vast majority of Islamic people and they are repelled and condemn these activities.
Sue McCluskey.
Look, I agree with Alana. We're a multicultural society and we can't judge what happens by the acts of what is a minority. And, you know, we've got to continue to make sure we embrace multiculturalism. It makes up the very fabric of our country. And if we are to be directed by those actions of those few, I think we will end up in a very different and sadder place than where we want to be.
I'll just quickly go, I'll come to you in a minute, Peter. Sam Bailey, listening to this, do you have serious concerns, or is yours a kind of philosophical concern drawn from the writings of Christopher Hitchens?
Probably the second one, yeah. But I just think that they miss the point. They have warranty in the Quran and the Hadith to do that. I'm not talking about the vast majority. The vast majority are good people. I'm talking about the actual religion, which gives them authority to do that.
Peter?
I think if you dig around in the Bible, you'll find plenty of excuses as well. Look, there are 1.5 billion Muslims in the world today. 23% of the world's population is Islamic. We're not at war with 23% of the world's population. 23% of the world's population isn't using that. And as I said, we can dig around and find all sorts of excuses. This is essentially, to my mind, this is one of the biggest problems. This is not a clash of civilizations. This is the abuse of a religious philosophy by a number of extremists who are using that ideology as a way of legitimizing and justifying all sorts of acts of terror and crimes which are essentially driven or motivated by other political issues. This is not a clash of civilization. Look, the danger of talking about it in this way is to demonize a massive chunk of the world's population. I think it's incredibly dangerous to start talking along those lines.
Yeah, it's sort of ironic, isn't it? I mean, you were accused in Egypt of essentially siding with Islamic extremists, but the really horrible irony in that is what happened to your producer in Somalia. I don't know if you can sort of tell us that story.
Yeah.
Tell us that story.
Yeah, I was with Kate Badishu to cover Somalia. This was back in 2005, and it was after an extended period in which the government had been forced into exile. And they were planning to go back into Mogadishu because it was judged that things had stabilised a little bit. And we'd gone back around that time to try and do some stories looking at the way that, or the type of country, the state of the country. Journalists hadn't been in there for a very long time. And we just arrived. We'd gone in to visit some of the government delegation that had gone to pave the way for the arrival of the government. And as we walked out, someone took a shot at us, and it hit Kate in the back. And she fell to the ground, and we put her in the vehicle. She was still alive and conscious, and we got her to hospital, and she died in surgery, or after surgery a few hours later. And this was an attack by extremists who were determined to keep, we believed, to keep the West and other, and not just journalists, but foreigners in general, and the government out of Mogadishu, because there were people who were exploiting that insecurity, using it to run drugs, to run people, to run weapons in and out of the city, who were exploiting the war economy. So, and this comes back to what I was saying, that Islam is being used and abused by people who have very specific political agendas.
Can you just explain one thing for us? I'm sure most of the audience would be interested in your take on this. Why are so many young Muslims, and even from affluent families throughout Europe and other places, including Australia, why are they so attracted to ISIS?
This is one of the things. There's a lot of talk about how disaffected youth seem to be winding up in these places, and I think that's a great myth. There is a sense amongst the Islamic community, the Islamic world, that Islam is under attack. Now, I'm not suggesting that it is. I'm simply trying to explain the logic that a lot of these kids are adopting. There is a sense that...
Do you think they have a point?
When I speak to them, it's hard to disagree, or it's hard not to see their point of view. I mean, they're incredibly angry with the way that Muslims are treated by the Israelis, for example, and the way that the West seems to be supporting Israel. They're incredibly angry at the way that the United States and its allies have behaved in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so what they see, and they respond to these kinds of millennial statements from the Americans, you know, who talk about the war on terror, who talk about a clash of civilizations, and they take that to mean themselves, and they feel a moral obligation to go out and join that fight. There is also a
do they miss the central point that the group they're joining is committing abysmal and horrible brutalities on people of other religions?
There are two things here. I think one is that there is, for them, there is a very clear moral clarity, which is very seductive in itself. These guys see that there is a very clear sense of right and wrong. They argue that the West is bombing civilians with airstrikes, with drone attacks and so on, and their argument is that if they're doing it to us, then we have to do it back. Now again, I'm not endorsing that by any stretch of the imagination, but we have to understand the kind of logic that drives this forward if we're ever going to deal with this problem. And as I said, there is a sense of adventure and there is a sense of romance. They want to be part of something that is very pure ideologically. They want to be part of something that has a great deal of moral clarity. And it is seductively moral and clear-cut as far as they're concerned.